Josh, have you ever needed to lease an office building before?
Absolutely.
Are you leasing an office building now?
I am.
Well, before you lease another office building, and before I lease another office building, before our listeners lease another office building, we're going to teach them everything they need to know about leasing an office space. And Josh, can you reach over here and pass me that pen? I want to take notes.
Here you go.
Josh, that's not my pen.
Some shows don't need a celebrity narrator to introduce the show, but this show does. 2 men, 8 kids, co-created by 2 different women, 13 multi-million-dollar businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Thrive Time Show.
3, 2, 1, here we go!
Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, and we'll show you how to get here. Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, now we here.
Yes, 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 and yes. Thrive Nation, welcome back to another exciting edition of the Thrive Time Show on your radio and podcast download. Reid Moore, welcome on to the Thrive Time Show. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm doing fabulous, Clay. Thanks for having me today.
So, Reid, could you share with the listeners out there what it is that you do for a living?
Sure. I'm a tenant rep broker. So what that means is I help businesses find and negotiate office space.
So you're a tenant rep broker. Does somebody have to go to school to become a tenant rep broker?
In the sense of your typical college, no. But in getting licensed, yes. In the state of Georgia, you have to take a class, pass a test to be licensed in order to do this.
So what have you been doing with your career before you became a tenant rep broker?
Oh, I have a crazy career, but right before I became it, I was doing investment sales. And before that, I was doing leadership development sales and personal training.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on the perspective here that I'm a business owner thinking about leasing space and that I don't know anything about it. Now, I have worked in the commercial real estate field quite a bit. I have leased a lot of buildings, but I'm going to pretend, Reid, that I have no clue about what I need to do when it comes to renting space. So I'm going to ask you the questions that I think the listeners have about renting space. And then we have Josh with Living Water Irrigation here with us, one of our show sponsors. Josh, meet Reid.
Howdy, Reid. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Josh. Yourself?
Oh, awesome, man. Pleasure to speak with you.
And we have Ben, our search engine optimization manager. Ben Summers here is joining us. Ben, say hello to Mr. Reid Moore.
Hey, howdy. Hey, Reid.
Hey, Ben.
So here's what we're going to do. You guys can ask him any questions that you want to ask, all right? But we're going to have the mindset as though you're trying to lease space, all right? So if I'm listening right now, Reid, and I'm thinking about leasing space, I'm going to go, I need my office is growing. Or maybe it's my first office. I'm a home-based business, and now it's time to move it out of the house and get an office space. Either way, I need to expand into a new office, get a new office. Why do I need to think twice before signing on the line on a lease? Like, why do I need to, before I just sign, whether I use a tenant broker, whether I use a tenant rep broker or not, why do I need to think twice before signing a lease?
Well, first, it's a legal document. So even though I'm not an attorney, I do advise all my clients to have an attorney look at it. But it is a legal document, and typically your space lease is one of the highest expenses, if not your second after payroll.
I would also argue that it is.
That much money, sorry.
I think it's worse than payroll, or more important than payroll, because it's an obligation that can cost you. You know, you can be involved in it for up 10 years, 7 years. 5 years. I mean, Reid, how often have you seen somebody sign a lease and not know what's in that lease?
Oh, well, I would say if they're not working with a broker that hasn't explained it or doesn't have a legal background, probably 100% of the time.
So when somebody signs a lease, and I'll give you an example. When I signed my lease years ago with a company called DJ Connection that I owned at the time, Josh, were you familiar were you aware, or back in the day, did you know that like a lease, certain leases require you to fix your own air conditioning unit if it goes out? Were you aware of that?
I was not aware of that.
Reid, what kind of lease does that for the listeners out there that aren't aware of that kind of thing?
Not a great lease. There's many different kinds of leases, but if you get into something like that, that's not the best situation for a client. You never want to be in, full, take on the full responsibility, if you can, of any of the actual full-on maintenance and everything. You want to at least have the landlord pay for that, or at least absorb some of that cost.
This is what happened. We were in a big building, and it's in Tulsa, probably a 9-story tower. Reid, I was probably 23 at the time, 24, and I signed a big old lease, like a 5-year, 6-year lease, something like that. And it was like, I want to say $10,000 a month, every month for, I want to say it was 6 years. I think it was 6 years, but it was $10,000 a month. I remember that it was at least $10,000 a month. So it was $120,000 a year, and it was for a total of 6 years. Now I didn't realize that I signed myself up, and again, foolishness is for me. Ignorance is no excuse here, but I didn't know. But I signed myself up for a $720,000 liability. Reid, I had no idea that I was liable for that much money. I didn't know that like on a balance sheet. That doesn't look so good. Why again? Do you think that a lot of young business owners are aware of how important it is to recognize what you're signing up for? I mean, when you meet people who are looking to lease space, are you shocked sometimes by how little people know about what that lease means?
I would say yes and no. I mean, I feel like some people think that they think that everybody's good, or they take it at somebody's word, and they think a lease is a lease. I maybe just pay monthly, and that's all they're liable for. Yep. And they don't ever dive into the actual line-by-line items of what that might entail.
I remember this is what happened. So I signed the lease. I'm moving in. Things are good. Things were good for probably about 6 months. Then at the end of the year, I got a bill, Reid, where they took the common area maintenance bill for the whole place, and they divided it by the amount of square footage you have, and they sent me a bill for like $20,000 because I guess the AC unit had gone out, and they needed to paint the parking lot, and I had an entire floor of this office building, and I had no idea that bill was coming at all. It was terrible, Reid. I was in a spot where $20,000 was a big chunk of money at the time. Have you ever found yourself working with tenants, business owners that aren't aware that they're on the hook for that kind of thing?
Oh, yes. I mean, it's typically after they've already gone through a terrible situation like that.
There we go.
That's when they learn about it. No one knows until they have to fork over the $20K. Yeah,
I remember that. I talked to my attorney, and he's like, yep, you owe it. I'm like, how do I owe it? He's like, it's worded in a way where it says you owe it. I'm like, but he never said that when we talked. He said, frankly, it doesn't matter what he said to you when we talked. This is what you signed. I remember going, but he said, this is everything included. And he goes, yeah, he could have said that, but you signed it. And I thought, well, I'm going to take this to my attorney. My attorney's like, well, listen, you signed it. I mean, but I think a lot of people there, Reid, we have pushback. We kind of look at it as a drawback. Like, I don't want to use a tenant representative because I got my own. I got it together. I can figure this out. I don't need to use a tenant rep broker. But why do you feel like that all of the listeners out there, regardless of what tenant rep broker they use, why do you sincerely believe that all of our listeners need to use a tenant rep broker when they go out there to lease space?
Oh, well, there's a few reasons, but market knowledge, for reasons like just explained, getting hit with a bill at the end of the year. But also, when you're leasing from a landlord, they already have representation, or typically have representation. So you don't want to go in blind into a situation where someone's being represented protecting the landlord's money, and you have no one else protecting your side or your interests at all.
Now, Josh, if you were going to go out there and lease space today, and your business, Living Water Irrigation, you guys do well. Do you lease space at all?
We do.
And okay, so you lease space, and are you in there for a long-term deal? Can you get out of? Is it year to year? Is it month to month? Is it a long-term deal? Talk to us about your lease.
It's year to year.
Year to year. Okay. What questions would you have for Reid Moore, the tenant rep broker, about signing a lease before you maybe sign your next one? Any question at all, my friend?
So, Reid, I think there's a lot of small business owners like myself who have achieved some modicum of success and now are sitting at this decision point. So what would you say pros and cons versus renting or leasing versus either purchasing or building your own space?
Ooh, this is a hot and fresh question from Josh.
Great. That is a great question, and that's actually one that I'm asked a lot. And typically in commercial space, if you're going to be buying your own building, most of the time you're not going to use all of that space. So then you're going to want to sublet it or something like that. But it's really, really capital intensive to own a commercial property. The HVAC, I got stuck with the $20,000 note at the end of the year. And what I always try to advise is, if you're not in the game of real estate or have experience with it, it's better to let someone else do that job for you. So leasing is typically less risk and less capital, especially over the long run.
I have a really horrible story to share, and it ends badly, and there's no hope for a comeback story here, but it's a true story, and I think the listeners need to hear this one. Years ago, and I worked in the commercial real estate world with my partner there. I met this guy, and Reid, you could probably relate to this guy. This guy was, when you meet your clients, you could probably relate to this character, this potential kind of client. He said he wanted to sell a building. And Josh, it's in the Lewis area in Tulsa. And I won't get into the details so no one knows who he is.
Lewis?
But I can say, Lewis used to be a nice area. We used to have the Southern Hills Country Club. It's still there, but it used to be nice restaurants. And you go up and down Lewis, very nice street. Now it's kind of getting ghetto, or it is ghetto, and it's getting worse in a lot of areas. And so this guy has a building, Reid, that's worth over $4 million. And he's got the thing almost paid off. And his core business, he decides he wants to wrap it up, shut it down. He's done. Because he's going to, Reid, his retirement is the building. Puts that thing up for sale in a good economy. Calls us, could you help me help me sell the building? And I said, okay. We meet the guy, we take great photos, do great video. The building's been sitting, by the way, for like a couple years. Now he's late 60, maybe even early 70 at the time I met the guy. He'd been trying to sell that building, I think, for almost 3 years, at least 2, and no one wanted to buy it in a good economy. Now he has all of his equity. I mean, we're talking like probably 90%, 80% of his net worth is tied up in that building. And the AC goes out, Reid. And he's got taxes that are owed. And the area is getting worse all around him. And we ended up having to help that guy sell his building for nothing. Like just very little. Like he barely got out of there with any equity at all. And instead of it being like a piggy bank you can pull your money out of, it was almost as though he'd put his money into like a treasure chest and then taken that treasure chest and put it in the river and then took the key to the treasure chest and had it swallowed by a cow, and then smacked that cow on the rear end, and that cow ran around, and he never saw it again. That's what it was like. I mean, it was like, you know what I mean? And I felt horrible because all his money was gone. How can you help the listeners out there? What advice would you have for the listeners to keep our listeners from ever getting in that spot?
Ooh, from getting that spot. Well, you can never control everybody else, which is sad. You can only control what you want. But that kind of goes back to what I was saying about they're capital intensive. You sink a lot of money into them, and you might not get it back. And did you say that this is where his business was located, the car business?
This is where this guy had his business located there. And what happened is he's like probably 65, 66, and he says, I'm going to wind down the business. So it's a consulting service. He winds down the company, right? So now he's got a building majority paid for, and he thinks I'm going to sell it because it's a good economy. And the area all around him is becoming, and you've seen what's happened to Lewis there, Josh.
Oh, just horrible.
It's an abomination now. The whole area is falling apart. Now he's in a spot where he can't sell it, and he doesn't have any income because he's kind of shutting his business down. And it was, and I've seen that situation, Reid, dozens of times up close and personal. It's terrible.
Right. Well, my advice on something like that then would be I'm a huge fan of cash flow. So, I know selling it and getting quick equity is good, but depending on it and if it's leasable, maybe actually try to lease it out if it's possible. That way you actually have some type of income on it and you're not taking such a large loss on it. And especially, like you said, it's been sitting there for 3 years. that can be typical in a lot of markets for commercial buildings.
Now, okay, so you're saying, I mean, that could be very I think a lot of listeners are used to selling a house, and they don't realize how freaking hard it is to sell a commercial building, even if the economy's rocking. Can you share how long, and again, I'm not asking for a hard fact, I'm just saying from your anecdotal experience working in the industry, how long does the average commercial building sit on sale before someone buys it?
Oh, I mean, it's easy over a year. That you don't even blink an eye at that point most of the time. So like you said, residential, people start getting antsy at 1 month, depending on what part of the country or their market. But commercial building, I mean, you can go 5, 10, even, 15, 20 years on some of these things.
Oh, that sounds horrible. Now, talk to us about cash flow. You use the word cash flow, and then I want Ben to be able to ask you a question. We have a lot of our listeners, I'd say 2 out of 3 of our listeners own a already successful company, and they're wanting to take it to the next level. Mm-hmm. But I bet you 1/3 of our listeners are learning these skills, and they've never heard the word cash flow before. I'm not looking for a textbook definition, but could you explain what cash flow means to our listeners so we don't lose anybody?
Of course. So, cash flow is something that's actually coming into you monthly, an asset that's actually paying you, and not something that you're actually paying on. So if you own this building and we'll say your note is $20,000 a month, but you're actually renting it for $60,000, then you actually have $40,000 coming in. So you're constantly getting money back into it and back from your asset.
So you're saying if your note, or AKA your payment, if your payment is less than the money coming in, that's the cash flow. That's the cash flow. That's the positive cash flow. Negative cash flow, more money coming out than is coming in, that's a negative cash flow. Ben Summers, I don't expect you to be a commercial real estate guru, but you are a young man who is a curious soul. Talk to us about what questions would you have if you were going to go out there today and lease your first office space?
Well, my question would be: would it be kind of similar to renting an apartment? Like, so you rent it, you sign the dotted line, and then is there like a penalty for like breaking the lease? I'm kind of equated in my mind as to like renting, just like an apartment that me and my wife are in right now.
Yeah, that's a great question, and yes. So typically, depending on your lease, you can have many different options about if that happens. So some buildings may allow you to sublet that out, some might not, and some might make you pay a portion of that rent that was going to be owed. Say you had a 5-year lease and you came out at year 3, they're going to want some of that money back from those 2 years that they lost.
Oh, it's unbelievably dangerous to flippantly sign a lease. If you're out there listening today, look at your lease, pay attention to your lease, get a tenant rep broker. Get yourself a broker to represent you. Do it. Now, what is the drawback of using a tenant broker? Or what do people think is a drawback, Reid, of using a broker?
Well, I think some people think that the actual drawback is that maybe we cost, maybe we're expensive to use, or maybe that we're just after the next closing or deal, and that we're really those guys that call the landlord's broker and be like, hey, my client wants this. What does your landlord really want out of this? So agents have a bad rep in many things, and I think there's kind of some bad connotation about people in the real estate industry. But really, I think a lot of people don't even know that our services exist.
I believe that. I think a lot of people think it's going to be an extra 6% fee on top of the lease. But what in reality, it's a situation where the lease is going to be, let's say, $2,000 a month, whether you have a broker help you get sign the deal or not. And then the person who's listing the property, the person who's leasing the property, they get the 6% commission. But if you're being represented by a broker, they just split that fee. So there's 6% already in play anyway. And the person who's helping you doesn't make a dime until you actually sign the lease. So I would highly recommend you to have a tenant rep broker. Now, I think a lot of business owners are going, how can I freaking save money? How can you, Reid, help our listeners freaking save money? I mean, if they're out there going, hey, man, I want to save some freaking money. How do you help our listeners save that freaking money? Not just some money, but how do you help them save some freaking money?
Okay. Well, to save some freaking money, there's a few ways we could do that. It's, number one is freeing up the business owner to actually do. We take the load and stress of finding locations, verifying them, trying to make it, the best, really gathering all the information. But also, a lot of people don't understand that there's a lot of times money left out on the table, which can be tenant improvement allowance, which can be the fact that they think because a product listed, that's the price they have to pay for it. So not knowing the market really puts the client at a disadvantage, or a tenant, at a disadvantage for not actually knowing the ins and outs of what actually can go on within the lease.
So how much does it cost to use you? Again, just kind of rehashing. How much does it cost to use you or another tenant representative that's out there?
99.9% of the time, we are free to the tenant.
And then you're charging
I'll say that again.
You're free to the tenant.
Free to the tenant.
So now, can the listeners out there who are interested in actually using your services, do you work in other states or just in Georgia? Tell us where you can help our listeners.
Well, I'm licensed in Georgia, but I can actually help them in multiple other states through my brokerage.
So how does having a nice office location, from your perspective, make it easier for owners to recruit quality employees? Because a lot of times I see employers out there trying to recruit high-quality employees to, kind of a rough van down by the river motif, kind of a rough, kind of a carny look there. Could you explain how it may be easier for people to recruit high-quality people if they have a high-quality office?
Sure. Well, I think I'm best known with a little story, and it's kind of what we've seen here in the Atlanta area. So about 10 plus years ago, tech companies like Microsoft and everybody started moving their office to the suburbs of the city of Atlanta. So everyone started moving to the suburbs, and that's where they put their offices. Well, now everybody's come back into the city, or really millennials, which is their target employee, because we have, a few colleges in the city, and they don't want to move to the suburbs. Everybody wants to stay in the city. So now these major corporations are having to move back into the city just for pure recruitment processes, not for clients, but for employees.
Now, what is one of the biggest advantages from your perspective of using a tenant rep? What's the biggest advantage? Is there a big advantage, a super advantage? What's the number one, the big kahuna, the big reason why all the listeners out there should use a tenant representative if they want to save some freaking money?
Well, the landlord has a representative protecting his interest. We are there to protect all of your money in your interest. So we're there to get you the best possible deal at the best possible location that suits your needs, and free up all the time for that business owner to run their business.
Okay. So you're going to free up time, save people money. Now, how does having a tenant representative help you better save when it comes to the closing of the deal? I mean, can we avoid any closing costs or closing fees if we're using a tenant rep to help us find an office space?
Well, closing costs on the lease side, not necessarily, or at least in my state, but really it's saving some money. And like I said earlier about the tenant improvement allowance, where a landlord might actually put the money into building out your office to suit your needs up front before you even move in. And that's really, a major saver, and something that a lot of people don't even understand is even out there.
So what makes you different from other tenant representatives that are out there? What makes you different? There's so many different, look, I'm getting a phone call. I must be a big deal. No, I'm not a big deal. Okay, so now what makes you different from other tenant representative people? There's a lot of tenant reps out there, but what makes you different?
Oh, well, a lot of people say that they're not chasing just the next deal, or they're not just chasing the next listing, but we try to truly put that forward. And I've gone into a meeting recently where a client was already talking to a few other brokers, and without even actually knowing their space requirements, and because the business owner's like, well, we used to have 14,000 square feet. I think we need 20,000. they were ready to show it. You know, they were seeing that dollar sign Class A office, 20,000 square feet.
Yep.
And what my partner and I talked about was like, look, we need to take a step back. We actually need to get an architect and you to talk about a space plan, you know, your employee size, your growth pattern, where you're trying to be in the next few years, so we can actually better suit you for your growth in the future and not just today on what you think you need. So to answer your question, we're different because we really try to take a customizable and really focused approach on not just today's needs, but really your future needs.
When you said you sit down with the clients to help them make a space plan, I've got audio, I believe, from a recent meeting that you had with one of your potential tenants, and I want to make sure this is the right audio clip here. I was talking to Josh about it before the show. I said, Josh, is this the right clip? And Josh didn't hear me, or I didn't see him. And it turns out he wasn't even there. But I went ahead and I got it queued up. And you can tell me if this is how you normally draw up a space plan for your potential tenants here. Let me cue it up here. Space, the final frontier. This is potentially your new office with Reid Moore. Our bold mission is to go where people want you to go, where employees may want to work, where, oh, Scotty, I need more power. Scotty, I can't get you more power, Captain. Scotty, I need some freaking power. I can't get you more power, I'm freaking out now. Now, have you ever noticed that, by the way, all the doors were always shut like that in Star Trek? Goes, you ever notice that, Reid? Do you do that in your meetings? Do you? And are you always yelling at Scotty to give you more power?
That's exactly it. I didn't know I was mic'd up, but you nailed it.
I mean, when you sit down with a tenant to help him sign a lease, I mean, how often do you say, Scotty, I need more power? And why does the guy who's running the power for you, why does he always make you make the decision of whether you want to turn off the shields to fire your photons? Why does that have to happen? Why do you always have to put down your shields to fire off the photons? I mean, and why is he Scottish? Tell us what's going on there, my friend.
Well, you know, I wouldn't know why you put down a shield while you fire, because I think you'd want to be protected while you're firing as well. You know, I'm not a Trekkie. It must have something to do with their laser beams or something. Not quite sure on that one.
Now, another question I have for you about your space planning is, you know, Scotty, he says he always talks about how he can't give you more power. Have you ever watched the old school Star Treks? Have you ever seen the old school Star Treks?
Yes, I mean, I've seen a few of them.
It seems to me as though Scotty always seems like he's sweaty, like he's been working really hard, but yet he really is just hitting buttons on a computer. When you go down there and like, what's he doing down there? Seems like all the scenes always consist of Scotty hitting a button. Have you noticed that too? I mean, do you feel like Scotty may be doing something else down there? Why is he always so sweaty?
It's probably the stress he's under. You know, I would assume as a business owner or the helper, not knowing what he's actually supposed to be doing and just constantly being yelled at for more power.
Well, before I get into allowing Josh to ask his final question for you about tenant representation, I've got audio. This is the last space planning meeting you had here with one of your tenants. This is you talking to Scotty. Let's see what you said here.
How much refit time till we can take her out again?
8 weeks, sir.
I guess that means that you... I think you were asking Scotty, how long will it take before you can take her, being the potential tenant, out to show her more space again? And you like to be responsive with your clients. I mean, if I called you today and said, hey, I want to see some space, how long before you would come back with proposals and office locations? And I mean, you help people find a good office space. How long would it take you? Do you typically wait 8 weeks? Are you going to put up with that crap from Scotty?
Oh, no, of course not. Of course not. You know, I try to be as responsive and basically immediately as I can. But a space plan could take, you know, a week or so. And it's, you know, unfortunately, leasing is not a fast process.
Well, let me cue more audio here. You said within a week? You said a week?
Oh, well, for a space plan, typically.
Okay, let me cue up more audio here. I want to make sure so that's unacceptable, Scotty. We can't wait 8 weeks to see space. Here we go.
You don't have 8 weeks, so I'll do it for you in 2.
He says we don't have 8 weeks. I'll give you 2. That's good. You're negotiating with Scotty here. Let's continue to hear how the conversation goes here.
Mr. Scott, have you always multiplied your repair estimates by a factor of 4?
Certainly, sir. How else can I keep my reputation as a miracle worker?
Oh, see, Scotty right there. Scotty's feeling the flow. He's a funny guy. That's Scotty. He's a funny guy. Okay. So, Josh, what questions do you have for Reid Moore, the broker tenant representative guru here? And just to help you clear your mind and help you come up with a great question, I'm going to just cue up an audio clip just to kind of help you get ready. All right. Okay, so continue now. Josh, seriously, I want you to.
So I think a question that all of our listeners really, really want to understand and really want to know is, what is the difference between saving money and saving freaking money?
Oh, well, I think that's all relative to everybody. But you never want to go into a lease and pay full price, or go into a lease blind and have a situation like Clay did. So having somebody that actually knows the ins and outs of leasing from A to Z can really save you some freaking money instead of just some money on maybe, your monthly rent.
And the other thing I would have for you, Reid, is, and this is just honestly, I'd never heard of a tenant rep prior to this show, so I'm grateful that I'm learning. I love learning new stuff. So a lot of small business owners like me who go see a space and say, hey, I want to call that broker, hey, I want to go look at that or whatever, and don't have representation, what would their action item be? How do they go find locally? Obviously, if they're in the Georgia area, then come find you, Reid. But for our listeners across the country, how are they going to go find representation to help them to find that next space for them?
Oh, that's a good question. So, I would say don't call the business that's on the sign. So if you go by and you see one of the big names, I won't name them, but one of the big nationally known commercial, or maybe it's one of your local known commercial real estate signs that have maybe the office listing or something on there, don't call them. Call a competitor. And that way there's no crossover of trying to represent both sides. But Google's there. I mean, you can literally Google tenant rep broker Tulsa, tenant rep broker Atlanta, and you'll typically get a list of commercial brokerages, or you can just type in commercial brokerage and then go to their website, and they'll typically say if they offer tenant rep services.
Now, do you have a phone number people can call you at? Is there a website our listeners can go to if they want to learn more about having you help them and assist them with their property search?
Sure. I always say you can call me, 404-661-2137. And my website is theofficeadvisors.com.
Could you repeat your phone number 2 more times and your website 3 more times?
Sure. 404
Yep.
661 2137.
Got it.
404 661 2137. The Office Advisors, and that's with an OR, not an ER at the end, .com.
Again. Can you read it to us again one more time? I'm just trying to marinate. I'm trying to. It's a thing. Some people have meta time. This is, to me, it's like we're traveling together. Nothing weird. Just 500,000 people together, men, women, all hopping into the sauna.
I'm starting to feel it.
And we're trying to. We're sweaty, and we're trying to find a sheet of paper. So we're listening to the podcast, and we're like, "Frick, I don't have any paper in this thing." So you reach over to your right, and you go, "That's not a pen." And you reach over to your left, and you're going, "Why is it so sweaty?" So you come out. You're trying to get out of that sauna to get a pen. So you're trying to just steam everywhere, and you're just like, "Oh, what's going on over there? Oh no!" And you're trying to write down the website, and you get out there, and you're like, "God, I'm finally out of the sauna." Jeez, what was that? What was that website again? Okay, can you tell us the website again, please?
Website is theofficeadvisors.com.
Theofficeadvisors.com. And write that down there, Thrivers. Remember, and if it's not a pen, find a pen. So one more time. What's that web address? One more time.
Theofficeadvisors.com.
Oh, Billy.
Okay. All right. So, listeners, if you're out there today and your name is Billy And we're trying to get a pin, but we actually grabbed you. I apologize, but to commemorate this moment,
Oh, Billy.
it has to be played one more time. Reid, I appreciate you so much for stepping out of the sauna with us and for answering all of our questions, because I think a lot of listeners didn't even know that your industry existed. Mm-hmm. And I've used I would never sign a lease without finding a tenant rep broker. I would not do it now knowing what I know. But, man, you just it's a minefield out there, and you can get yourself stuck in a long-term agreement that's terrible. And don't be a stranger to our good friend Reid Moore. Reid Moore, I appreciate you, my friend. Are you prepared to end the show with a boom?
You know it.
Here we go. Are you prepared, Josh?
I'm getting there. Okay, I'm there.
Okay, Ben Summers, are you ready?
I was born ready.
Josh, it's not a pen.
Don't touch me there. Stop it.
Okay, here we go. Wow, here we go. Whoa, here we go. And 3, 2, 1. Boom. Stop what you're doing and think about this for a second. What would happen if your company was suddenly able to generate exponentially more quality sales leads? That would be incredible. What would happen if your company came up at the top or near the top of the Google search engine results? Well, I would just feel overwhelmed with all that business. How many thousands of dollars in lost sales or millions of dollars in lost sales are you missing out on simply because your potential customers can't find you when they go online to search for the products and services that you offer? I refuse to think that thought because I don't want any more business. Unless you are a dirty communist that hates money, my new book, Search Engine Domination, will help you grow your business. In my new book, Search Engine Domination, we will teach you the specific steps that you need to take to dominate the search engine results. What do you mean by dominate? You see, in my new book, Search Engine Domination, we will teach you the specific steps that you need to take to dominate search engine results. Download your free ebook copy today at thebestseobook.com. I repeat, that's thebestseobook.com.
My name is Amy Baltimore, and I am a CPA in Covington, Tennessee. I've been working with the Thrive team now for about a year. One of the first things that they did was to update my website and my search engine optimization. I prior had a website, but I was not being found on Google, and all of my new business was coming through referrals from friends, family, etc. And right away, I started to see results. People were calling and coming in saying that they found me on Google. They just Googled CPA near me, and there I was at the top of the page. And so it's been a great help to my business.
Again, you can download your free ebook copy today at thebestseobook.com.
Hey, this is Dustin Huff. I'm with Keystone Harbor Marina. We joined Thrive back in January and have been working with these guys for about 7 months. During that time period, we have moved up our Google rank through reviews and SEO processes that we've compiled through these guys. Our leads have gone from about 4 a week to now 165 a week. So the process works. I will tell you from experience, once you begin, you have to stay with it. As long as you continually do this week in and week out, month in and month out, you'll continually grow.
The system works, but nothing works unless you do. You've got to take some action. Download the ebook for free today at thebestseobook.com.
Hello, my name is Daniel with Daniel's Heating and Air here in Amarillo, Texas. The way Google has affected my business, we have got a lot of calls from Google. Right now it's July, and we've had the best month ever. And it took us about 8 to 10 months to get on top of Google, and I'm glad we did.
Remember, nothing works unless you do. You have to go to thebestseobook.com today. Download the ebook for free. Just download that ebook for free, and you'll be off to the races.
Hi, my name is Christina Nemus. I'm the owner and operator of Angel's Touch Auto Body and Detailing in Bourne, Massachusetts. We have been working with Thrive and their coaching for, say, 8 to 9 months, and it took us about 6 months, 5 to 6 months to get on the top of Google, and with their help with the website and marketing, and the SEO and retargeting ads with Google, and it has been phenomenal. We just have light and day business coming in, phone calls coming in, walk-ins, referrals. It's just through the roof, and we couldn't be happier. At the moment, we are up 50% this year from the previous year, and not only is that part of our own hard work and diligence, but also with the help of Thrive and what they've done for us and getting us on the top of Google and, you know, all their knowledge and coaching. And yeah, so super grateful, super pumped to see what the future holds for all of us. Thank you.
This is your year to thrive. Success you will find. Today is your day, and now is your time.
Lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. Proverbs 10:4. I'm here to tell you, you can do it if you can just motivate yourself. 12 the masses had to cut off a few, so on the daily you and I could rendezvous. A misshapen tree that I had to prune. I had to make cuts to be here daily at noon. So like a tidal wave of knowledge monsoon, I could rain on the parades of those who doubt in you. Are you the next Rockefeller or the next guru, or the next Dr. King who's changing the rules? Walls are in your way, will you run right through? Like a running back, forth the one, it's up to you. I remember my days back in the dorm room, tuned to the gloom like the temple of doom, overwhelmed with the doubts that try to consume my hope for the future that I could pursue. But from the mountaintop now I can conclude that you have what it takes if you want the view to.
This is your year to thrive. Success you will find. Today is your day, and now is your time. It's your year to thrive. Success you will find. Today is your day, and now is your time.
This moment is profound cause you're above the ground. Your road might have been rough, but what you got now is now. We're here to pick you up and to even show you how, but you gotta be resourceful with that old plow. Started from the bottom, but I worked my way up, cause by 4 a.m. I've always been prayed up. Rise and grind, now's your time, don't dare let up. You gotta get it, don't quit it till your seeds grow up.
This is your year to thrive.
Come on.
Success you will find.
Yes.
Today is your day.
Somebody say,
and now is your time.
It's your time.
It's your year to thrive.
Come on.
Success you will find. Today is your day, and now is your time.
It's your time. We all have a wish and we all want to win, but we cannot begin without self-discipline. If you fall on your face, get yourself up again. Attach yourself to goals, not fail with the friends. When the storms get rough and they scatter and leave, you only be there with yourself and what you believe. We believe in you, but not as much as God does. If you're going through hell, He's got nothing but love. Apply what you learn, increase what you earn, and in due time you have money to burn.
Apply what you learn, increase what you earn, and in due time you got money to burn.
Sing it.
Apply what you learn, increase what you earn, in due time you got money to burn.
Sing it.
Apply what you learn,
Sing it.
increase what you earn.
Yes.
In due time you got money to
With
to
this biblical miracle,
yeah.
I look to shout down the doubters, kill the weeds that be killing your dream flowers, empower you to devour all the obstacles that make your sweet dreams sour. As for me, I used to stutter, but now I'm on the microphone smooth like butter. If I can do it, I know you can too, but you must stick to it like postage do. And while Merton's on the chorus, singing what he sings, I encourage you to dream big dreams.
Today is your day.
Today's your day.
And now is your time.
It's your time.
This is your year to thrive.
Sing it.
Success you will find. Today is your day.
It's your day.
And now is your time.
It's your time.
Today is your day.
Come on.
And now is your time.
Sing it, Martin.
Today is your day. Now is your time.
I realize I can't sing like that, but I can talk and play the woodblock. Okay. If you guys need me, I'll just be over here.